just 1 week left before the formidable Trump imposes tariffs and sanctions on Russia. By the way, he has already complained that Putin isn't responding to him, that Putin is ignoring his ultimatums and threats. Well, let him cry some more. Meanwhile, the battles continue, and we're getting some very good news. So let's move to the map, and as always, I want to sincerely ask you to subscribe to the channel if you've watched my videos before and still haven't subscribed. Please do, your subscription helps the channel grow. Thank you to everyone who's already subscribed. Now friends, in the past 24 hours, we've likely witnessed the most important breakthrough of the entire summer campaign. I don't hesitate to use that phrase, so make sure to watch this episode to the end. It's a very important one. The fighters of the center grouping managed to break through right into the center of Pokrovsk. And the breakthrough spans over 5 kilometers, and importantly, these 5 kilometers are through residential areas deep inside Pokrovsk. This is no longer about clashes on the outskirts. The fighting is now in the heart of the city, and videos from the center of Pokrovsk have already surfaced online. Yes, the footage is from the Ukrainian side, showing shelling and active combat. But again, this is from the very center of Pokrovsk. Who would have thought just a month ago that Russian troops would be inside the city center? Let's go in order, not from Pokrovsk. Let's start with Kupiansk. That's another city where battles are already underway. The results here are more modest compared to Pokrovsk, but in the past 24 hours, there have been some changes. US cartographers haven't marked it yet, but I've received information from people on the ground. Firstly, our guys managed to enter Moskovka, a village that is directly adjacent to the city, practically part of it. Secondly, inside Kupiansk itself, our troops gained control over Technichesky Lane and Alexievka Street. Let me clarify. Unlike in Pokrovsk, there's no geolocated footage confirming control here, only verbal reports from locals. So we'll wait for objective confirmation, but I'm giving you the information I have. Now, moving closer to Pokrovsk, to the Lyman section of the front. For several days now, steady progress is being recorded there. The Azov fighters stationed in this area are showing their helplessness in the face of our guys. This time, Russian forces advanced 1.7 kilometers from Zelenaya Dolina toward Shandrigolovo. Now, just about 4 kilometers remain to that village, and the area of the advance was 3.2 square kilometers. If we sum up the progress over the past 3 days, our troops have moved the front here by 13 square kilometers, despite the fact that the elite of the AFU are stationed here. But this elite can only retreat. Lyman itself remains a distant target for now. However, by the end of the summer campaign, the front line will likely reach 5 to 6 kilometers from the city. No doubt about that. Now let's go back to the main event of the summer, the breakthrough, into central Pokrovsk. So, Pokrovsk, who would have imagined that Ukraine's defenses would collapse here so quickly and dramatically? Just look, Russian fighters broke through from the direction of Belgika station, pushing past the central market of Pokrovsk. That's right. Not just to the market, but beyond it. The last geolocated position is Marshal Moskalenko Street, and the combat footage that surfaced online shows these very buildings on the approach to Moskalenko Street. So it's not just claims, we have objective evidence showing that Russian troops broke into the city center. So how did it happen? Commanders of the center grouping acted very wisely. At first, they didn't storm the city head-on. Instead, they began bypassing the city from the northeast, establishing fire control and possibly later physical control over the main supply arteries, the railway and highway from the north. Then they began infiltrating DRG units, sabotage arch recon groups into the city, which sowed panic among the AFU. Remember the video where Russian fighters shot up a Ukrainian pickup truck on Zashchitnikov Street? That was about a week ago. Since then, a dozen DRG units have snuck into the city. The Ukrainian garrison was constantly stressed and on edge. A few days ago, reports began to surface that the AFU were pulling forces from the south toward the center, building their main line of defense there. This meant that they effectively abandoned the southern part of the city, not completely, but it was no longer their priority. This decision backfired. Yesterday, Russian troops advanced from the Shevchenko district and Belgika station, breaking into the southern part of Pokrovsk and taking it under full control. This includes Pavel Popovich, Kievskaya, Solovinaya, and Ruskaya streets, mostly private houses, with no serious fortifications to slow the advance. Realizing that the AFU defense was weak and could be easily overrun, Russian forces pushed further, across the fields to the village of Troyanda, which sits between two districts of Pokrovsk. This is technically not Pokrovsk, it's a separate settlement between neighborhoods. Ukrainian forces attempted to resist there, but were quickly swept aside. Troyanda came under Russian control, followed by the football stadium, racetrack, and a nearby forest area. Then troops reached Zashchitnikov Street and continued the offensive toward the Central Market Complex, which is both the city center and a fortified defense zone. Last night, reports said fighting had begun in and around the market, where the Ukrainian garrison had concentrated its defenses. But surprisingly, they couldn't hold it. By around 10 p.m., reports said the Central Market was under Russian control, and Russian troops were advancing along Europeyskaya and Shevchenko streets toward the railroad tracks. Also under control is the central bus station. What do we know at this moment? The troops haven't yet reached the railway. They stopped near Marshal Moskalenko Street, next to the Church of Archangel Michael. Only about 500–600 meters separate them from the railway, but regardless, the result is very impressive. When news started pouring in that they had reached the center, taken the market, the railway station of the market, and were advancing beyond that point, I was like, what? Seriously? I knew and had said in previous videos that Russian fighters were already active in the city, but I thought it was mostly DRG units. I didn't expect it to turn into a 5-kilometer breakthrough to the city center. That's wow. As for next steps, the focus will likely shift to clearing the western part of the city. Firstly, we're already pushing from Zverevo. Secondly, the area consists mainly of 1 to 2 story houses, unlike the eastern part, which is full of high-rise neighborhoods. As of now, about 10% of Pokrovsk is fully under Russian control. And this is just the beginning. Konstantinovka direction, July 31st, to the south of Konstantinovka. Chasov Yar is now completely under Russian control. In a titanic effort, the 98th Airborne Division and other units have completed the mission that began over a year ago. Meanwhile, a dramatic situation is unfolding south of Konstantinovka, south of the Kleban-Beek Reservoir. Russian forces are gradually dislodging the AFU, and yesterday they achieved several important successes. First, from the south, they entered and took control of half of the eastern section of Alexandro-Kalinovo. This means it's now very close to being fully liberated, and likewise to physically cutting off the road to Konstantinovka. Second, they gained a foothold in the southwestern outskirts of Yekaterinovka. Russian forces also crossed the river and reached the railway tracks northeast of Kleban-Beek. Only about 500 meters remain before the road to Pleshevka is cut off. In short, the Ukrainian group south of the Kleban-Beek Reservoir will soon be cut off from both sides. Those who don't escape in time will be destroyed or taken prisoner. So I believe this AFU group is living out its final days. And now we turn to another very important section of the front, Chasov Yar. Today, both Western media and Russian sources have confirmed the complete and final clearing of Chasov Yar. This means the city is now fully under Russian control, and this also means that we will soon see a new offensive from here toward Konstantinovka. I believe the battle for Konstantinovka will take place in the fall, and by winter its fate will be decided. The city sits in a low-lying area, which is why the AFU had poured so many forces into defending Chasov Yar, a very important city for them. With the loss of this city, even Ukrainian military experts now admit that the fate of Konstantinovka will be decided very quickly. And from there, it's not far to the key cities of Donbass, namely Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. That's the current update from the Ukrainian front. Let's now move on to the political news. Apparently, both Beijing and New Delhi have made it clear to Washington that they will not give up Russian oil. Even Trump's own uncertainty about whether the sanctions he's preparing will have any real impact on Russia is telling. We're going to impose tariffs and all that stuff that's typically imposed. It may affect them or may not, but maybe it will, said Trump. If it were a case of 100% secondary sanctions against all importers of Russian energy,